Welcome back. It is Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and take a look at some custom work that I have done. Now, I've been plotting and planning on doing this for a couple of months. Finally got around to it and just want to show you guys what I ended up doing. Now, this is going to be a Dark Knight Returns Batman using the recently released collector's edition of the figure. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have done some customs on this figure, a lot of removing of the battle damage and adding some paint. But I had my own ideas of what I wanted to do, and I just thought I would let you guys check it out. So I had a couple of ideas. Some things just ended up happening organically, so pretty surprised at how they came out. But now I did just open up one of these. I do still have the platinum edition of this figure, and I have another closed box version. If I ever see this on sale, or just if I ever come across one in the wild, I may end up picking up another one because there's still a little bit of custom stuff that I want to do. But for now, I thought this was really everything I wanted. Not in a big rush of opening another one at this point, but I did utilize everything that came with the figure and even found something to do with the extra unmasked head that comes with the figure in the package. Now, I want to try and get through it pretty quickly. So let's take a closer, detailed look at this custom. Now, I had this idea a long time ago, and that is that I always come across images of Batman from The Dark Knight Return with some yellow pouches. Now, this could be in statues, in other figures from other lines. A little bit of artwork shows it, but not too many references there. But I just really like that look when he has those extra thigh pouches added to his arsenal. So that was definitely the main thing I had in mind, was I wanted to add the thigh pouches. I wanted to add a lot of articulation because this figure is one of those that is pretty much notoriously known for not having too much range in the waist or even in the head. And I wanted to show you guys what I added to give it a little bit more range. Now, first things first, I did go ahead and extend the neck peg. You got this pretty nice head sculpt. Me choosing to use the masked version on this custom. Really nice head sculpt. I love the dark wash that they gave it, which in fact gave me some inspiration to go ahead and add some dark wash to the rest of the figure. So really nice head sculpt. They changed it from the original release. Wasn't a big super fan of that head, but it does kind of work for the Dark Knight Returns from Frank Miller, who has some pretty grotesque artwork. But I did want to add some more range. I thought the head was sitting very low on the body, so went ahead and cut the peg, the barbell peg from the neck, extended it, although it was only by millimeters. It was not a lot, but there is a way you can tell that I extended the head, and that is because now he looks down really far. And if you look in the back, there's a gap. Now, originally, when you have the figure, if you push the head all the way down, there's no gap. It's pretty much covered. And this little gap doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't hurt the figure in any way. But as you can see, he could look down way more than he could before. And in fact, the main benefit of doing this is he could look up really high. Now, that is way more than he could in the standard release. So, by just adding that little couple of millimeters of extension of the neck peg, you add a lot of range. And now the head feels really smooth. You still got right to left. And of course, you could tilt the head for some attitude. So, that is the first thing I did, was extend the neck peg. Now, you might notice that on a lot of these figures, the shoulders sometimes are really tight. I could remember this being on even the Dark Knight Returns Superman, the collector's edition of Superman with Crypto. Those shoulders were really tight where the disc couldn't move. So I have a trick where I pop off the arm, pop out the rotator disc, and warm it up. And then I plug something in there, like the end of a screwdriver, which widens the gap while it's hot. And what happens is that it stays a little bit wider and it softens up the plastic. Then you replace the shoulder bushing and pop the arm back on. And now the arm moves with a lot of range and motion. You could really feel how easy it is now. Even the other side moves where before I could not get any movement at all. Now, what this does is you can move it forward and have this certain tight in the front part, like where the chest is. But if you want, you can always pop the shoulders back and get that wide, tank look for Batman. That's another thing I did to add range of motion in the shoulders was loosen up those sockets, and it really allows you to get a lot of movement out of the shoulders. Now going down to the waist, this is a thing I really wanted to change to get a lot more dramatic poses and do figure photography that you can't really do when you get this figure in hand. Now, of course, what I did was pop out all of the abdomen parts and the upper chest, make the notches so that it could bend forward, and even remove some of the plastic that's not needed to give it a way smoother range of motion at the waist, got side to side, so much that even it'll go like almost under the utility belt. And of course, this adds a forward crunch. Now you can see this because the chest actually collapses almost to where it's touching that utility belt. And that definitely adds a lot more articulation. Now, this allows you to get him in some pretty nice poses and just raises up that fun factor and the way you can display him. And that's pretty much it as far as adding articulation. Now, this does have a thigh swivel, a thigh cut, and that is because of the horse that came with the original release. But as you can see, you don't really need that because the thigh moves on its own without having that thigh cut. So sometimes I think that thigh cut was just not needed. But this is where I did add the pouches right onto that line right below the thigh cut. Now, there is a reason why I left a little gap and I didn't put it like right where the line is. And that is because before I glued it on there, I wanted to check it to see as far as he could kick his knee up. And if I would have put the pouches right at the line, the pouches would have hit each other without getting the knee to go up really towards his chest. And leaving that little gap allowed me to be able to lift the knee up almost, right angle to the hips, which gives you a lot more range and added dexterity. And at the same time, you can still move that thigh swivel without the pouches rubbing on each other, which was an added benefit. So, pretty nice as far as adding articulation and adding the pouches to the figure. Now we will get into the painting that I did. First off, there's something that a lot of people do with these, and that is that they just remove the battle damage, and he had some scratch marks here on the chest emblem. And I'm just not a big fan of that. Even with my custom Nightfall Batman from the Bane 2 pack, I didn't remove any battle damage. What I ended up doing was adding paint, mixing up my own colors, matching what I want to match, and then even adding some shade by adding a darker gray, like where I want to. That just gives me the option to darken a color or lighten a color, and I just do it to the whole figure. Now, luckily with this one, I was able to match the gray almost exactly. Let it dry, added some matte sealer because if you add gloss sealer, it makes it really shiny. And this figure has enough shininess to it that the matte sealer works just as well. And that reduces any paint rub. So I think I had to cover up the paint on the left knee, on the left thigh, and on both shoulders, and of course the chest, which was easy because I just used a black spray Tamiya paint, which covers it up very easily and it does not rub off once it dries. And that's one thing about me is I don't know how I do it. Like, people say, what do you do when the neck tone doesn't match the head, like the different skin tones? Well, I don't worry about that because I just match the tones. I just mix up my own tone and either match the neck or change the paint to the face or vice versa and just match the paint. So that doesn't really bother me or scare me at all. I guess I'm just built different, but it's something I'm really adept at. Makes customizing a lot easier when you just match the paint. Now, I did put a darker yellow on the utility belt, which is more of an orange, brown, yellow, and I added the same paint to the pouches on the thigh. Now, the final thing I did having to deal with paint was I loved that black wash that it has on the mask. So, mixed up a little black wash, added even a little bit to the mask just to add my own touch. And then I started, on all the wrinkles. Now, I mainly did the blue parts of the costume, which would be the cape, the gauntlets, the hands, the trunks, and the boots, just giving those parts a little bit of tone and depthness to it that it doesn't have with the standard release. Now, I didn't add any dark gray to the wrinkles in the suit, as sometimes I feel like you're just doing too much shading. You know what I mean? There is a feeling sometimes where I feel like uh, washes and cell shading could actually be a big negative on a figure. So for this one, I decided just to leave it its regular gray color and I didn't add any shading. Now, this could change sometimes when I do these. They are a work in progress, as my regeneration suit Superman has been, that I've been working on that for like 2 years and still isn't perfect, but it's pretty close to what I had envisioned. Now, once I did all of this, I was pretty much almost done with this little custom that I did. The only other thing I did was he does come with that hand that has the batarangs like positioned between his fingers. And I just added some silver paint to that, as well as added the black wash, as I did for the open gesturing hand, which I really love these open gesturing hands because they just add so much emotion and options when you're doing figure photography and displaying the figure. And like I said before, I just added the silver paint to those batarangs in the glove and added black wash to the hands. Even the fists that he comes with, I added a black wash to give them a little bit of pizzazz and match them up with the wash that I added to the costume. Now, of course, he does have also open hands where you can add a full batarang. I do have my custom batarang on a rope that came with the original release, but I did add a bendy wire. So this is another option you can add to mix and match parts to get closer to making your definitive Dark Knight Returns Batman. Now we'll get into what I did with the unmasked head. Now I have to be honest, that paint job on that unmasked head was pretty horrendous. I wasn't a big fan of it. And I had originally planned to make the pouch Batman using this extra Dark Knight Returns that I had from the original release. I think I ended up buying 5 of these. So I did have one just laying around that I hadn't used. I hadn't worked on doing the custom, and it just worked out perfectly that I had this unmasked head to add to this body. Now, this one I had started off by doing the dark shade in between the gray lines, adding that wash to give the body a little bit more tone and contrast. You could really see the wrinkles in the costume when you add that wash just slightly. You don't want to overdo it. But since I had already started customizing this one, I removed the head and just had the body laying around. That kind of got my gears turning, my, thought process going, what I wanted to do with this, unmasked head. Now, one thing I did notice is that they want you to use the unmasked head on this collector's edition version, but it doesn't have the cowl on the back of the cape, or they didn't give you a cowl that he could hold. So what I ended up doing was taking this wrinkled up cowl. I got it from the Unmasked Thomas Wayne, which that's another figure that I have bought like 8 of those to do customs and to use the guns. So I did have about 3 of these cowls extra laying around, and I just heated it up, cut it, stretched it out, pulled it, and prodded to where it would sit perfectly on the shoulders of the black cape. And then I glued it in. So now I have my unmasked Bruce Wayne Batman from the Dark Knight Returns, but he does have the cowl folded up on the back of his shoulders, on the back of the cape. Now, I did want to attack the face paint, as I said before. Wasn't a fan of the way they painted it up. It had so much darkness, and I just didn't like. I think they overdid it on the paint. So once again, I used my skills that I have, and I repainted the face, toned down the skin tones, a lot of the darkness, and I still did add my own shading around the brows. And in the end, I was really happy with the way it came out. So now I have my almost definitive blue and gray version of Batman from the Dark Knight Returns. And I also have a pretty nice unmasked Bruce Wayne from the Dark Knight Returns that I just made on a whim. So pretty happy with those two. There is one more thing that I did. That was that you do get this pretty nice lamppost. It's supposed to represent being in Crime Alley. Took a lot of figure photography and it was really fun. This figure with the added articulation, very pleasurable to work with. Put him in a lot of different poses, a lot of action poses. The added hands give you that dexterity to change up the way he stances and poses. Got him in some tight posing because of the added articulation. But what I did notice, the lamppost seemed to always fall on me. So since I am gonna have another one of these, I mean, I'm for sure gonna buy another collector's edition of the Dark Knight Returns Batman. So then I'll have another lamp that I could leave as is. So what I ended up doing is I took a stand, just a regular standard black DC Multiverse stand, and I glued the lamppost to it, but I glued it in such an angle where the wider part is kind of where the bulb is, the lamp is of the street light, because it always tended to tip towards the front like that. And I glued it, let it dry, and now it makes it a lot more stable where you can sit it down, rock it, and it won't fall over the way it was falling over before. And it's just something that I added really quickly to give it a little bit more stability and help when I was doing figure photography. So pretty happy with that. Really worked out well. You can add different characters like the Joker or even Carrie Kelly, which is the Robin that is from the Dark Knight Returns. But really a lot of fun. Pretty happy to finish this version of the Dark Knight Returns Batman. But anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.